All right.
All right, and language interpretation should now be available in the bottom bar for everybody.
Where do we go? I don't see that.
All right. All right, we're gonna get started. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for coming to here tonight to take part in this Zoom call regarding the BCYF Dorchester Community Center to be located at 4048 Geneva Avenue, right here in Grove Hall. My name is Robertson Castor.
Obrigada pela pessoa se juntar.
I'm the Public Facilities Senior Project Manager for this project. And I'm excited to bring this project to you today and share this with the community and talk about what's going on and where we are at. Petra, if you go to the next slide. So for those who are listening, there are several channels for language for translations. The 4 languages are listed right there. If you would like to transfer to one of the channels that is providing one of the languages listed there, there is a button at the bottom of the screen shown as a globe indicator. Also written underneath it is the word interpretation. So you click there, as you see on the graphic, the options will plug up. You can select one of the options. And then you have the option to also mute the original language so that the original speaker you won't hear, you'll actually hear just the translation. I see a couple comments popping up regarding issues with hearing the translation. All right.
Est-ce que nous attendons?
It's just one we're hearing, I think, Roberson.
Yes, I think it was one translator, but Petra's anyway, we can make sure he's in that breakout room only. Okay. I think we should be good
Roberson?
Yep.
Sorry, say that one more time.
I was just making sure we have every interpreter in the breakout rooms. I think there was one that was overhearing, but I think we should be all set now.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes,
Justin.
that's Brett. I was just on the phone with him, and I think he's finally in
So I
the meeting.
can interpret my language and it won't. You guys won't hear it.
Right now, we're still hearing you in the overall chat, so we have to get you into the breakout room.
Yeah. So just for all the interpreters, I think at the bottom of your screen, if you click the interpretation button, you should be able to select the channel of the language that you're on. And as long as you logged in with the link that was specific to you, it should create an audio channel for you, for anybody to be able to change the language for themselves and listen to you in a different language.
All right. All right, then I'll continue. I think we're good now. So yes, so what I'll do here is I'll introduce the project team from the city of Boston. We have Public Facilities Department with Carrie Griffin, our director, Evan Brinkman, Assistant Director of Design, Patrick Mulvey-Welsh, Assistant Director of Construction, myself as Robertson Castor, Senior Project Manager, and Michael Susi, the senior review architect from the City of Boston Public Facilities Department. I'll turn it over to Marta for BCYF, Boston Centers for Youth and Families.
Marta, you're on mute.
Okay, thank you. That might work. Good evening. I'm Marta Rivera. I'm the Commissioner of the Boston Centers for Youth and Families. I have several folks joining me. Actually, I'll call out a few people that will be joining several of these meetings moving forward. Annie Chin, our Chief of Staff. Eddie McGuire is our Director of Operations. Sean Webb is the Regional Operations Manager that oversees several sites, and the Grove Hall area is one of his areas. Sandy Holton is our Public Information Manager. I know she's on the call. 80 Pomales, wave 80. It says Marta Rivera, but that's 80. That's the Grove Hall Senior Center Director. And we also have Nadine, where are you, Nadine? Are you on here somewhere? Nadine Johnson Jesenik is our Aquatics Operations Manager. And I think that's everyone. If I miss anyone, I apologize. Oh, sorry. And we also have, I believe Erin's on the call, who's the program manager for this area. Oh, sorry. Thank you. So I also wanted to mention we have a community engagement committee as part of this group. And they are listed there. Paulette Durrett, Mike Kozu, Justice Porter, Charles Gonsalves, Justice and Charles are both Burke High School students. Chris Bishop, Randy Muhammad, Connie Forbes, Pablo de Barros, Ed Gaskin, Marcus Lewis, Angie Peguero, and Khalid Mustafa. And we want to thank them in advance. They are residents and stakeholders in the community who will be helping us with community engagement. And I'll turn it over to you, Teal.
Thanks, Marta. My name is Brett Benson. I'm a principal in charge at UTL, and I'm joined by many of my colleagues tonight on the call, all of whom you'll hear from. One of our colleagues, Mimi Love, is not able to join us tonight, but we have Petra, Andrew, and Alessandro, each of which you'll hear from tonight. Next slide. So very quickly, I just want to go through the agenda of what we're hoping to do tonight. But before I even do that, I really want to emphasize that we're here to listen tonight. We're not going to be presenting any new information. We do want to talk a little bit about the schedule and the process moving forward. We want to review the 2022 study that was completed looking at new community centers throughout Dorchester, and then compare that to some of the information that we gathered during that study from residents of Grove Hall. We want to talk a little bit about the site location and the neighborhood, and then move on to next steps and any Q&A discussion. Next one.
Excuse me.
Thanks.
This is the overall
Thanks,
project
Brett.
schedule. Yep. Go ahead, Petra.
Thank you, Brett. Sorry, I'm just finding the mute button here. So this graphic represents our project schedule for the community center and the time frame that we will have for community input. We're currently at the beginning of the early design phase, which we started very recently in October, and that phase is approximately 9 months long. This phase piggybacks on the study for the community center site that Brett just mentioned, and the program for that was completed in 2022. The 9 months of early design phase includes things like confirming site conditions, confirming activities to determine spaces, determining how the spaces fit and interact with the site, developing overall interior and exterior design, and setting the sustainability goals for the project. And this phase will also be where a majority of the community input will occur as we solidify the program for the building and move into the technical design phase, which includes, as we've noted here, detailed development of the building plans, detailed coordination with consultants to develop building systems such as lighting, structure, HVAC, and also selection of materials. And after the technical design phase, we would be moving into the construction phase before move-in and opening down the road. And so we'll zoom in on the next slide to the community input timeline. And as I mentioned, we started early design very recently in October. This meeting that we are having right now this evening is our first community meeting. And as Brett mentioned, the goal is really to listen to you all. In late November, early December, we are running a series of community workshops focused on understanding what the community needs and desires are for some of the spaces in the building. These workshops will engage different age groups and occur at the Frederick Pilot Middle School, Burke High School, Grove Hall Senior Center, and the Vine Street Community Center. After that, we will have community meeting number 2, which will occur on December 13th and be a follow-up to this meeting that we're having now, and kind of summarize any kind of new developments and the workshops that have taken place. And in early 2024, we are hoping to conduct some follow-up community workshops focused on building planning. And then following that would be community meeting 3, which would kind of look at early kind of building planning, so building plans. And I'll turn it over back to Brett.
Great, thanks. So we just very briefly want to touch on the 2022 Dorchester Community Survey Study that we completed. And as I said before, you can go to the next one, Petra. That study was focused on new community centers throughout Dorchester. And so we were surveying Dorchester residents north to south, east to west. And the result of that study was this first community center here in Grove Hall. And so what we've done is we've gone back and we've looked at some of the survey responses that we received during that study to try to isolate the Grove Hall residents' responses and compare that to some of the responses that we got for the program study throughout Dorchester. Again, now that we're working within Grove Hall as a neighborhood, we really want to make sure that this community center is tailored to the needs and the desires of the neighborhood. So broadly speaking, the program of the building broke into 3 categories of uses. The first one is community and education. This is the type of area where we would see a community room, a community kitchen, classrooms, an after-school program, the senior center, and the teen center. The next category is arts. Areas that we looked at were performance spaces, recording studios, an art room, and a maker space and tech lab. And then finally, fitness and sports programs. So a swimming pool, the gymnasium, flexible fitness spaces, cardio and weight rooms, and so on. And so I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Alessandro, who will talk us through some of the survey responses that we received during the study and how that compares to Grove Hall.
Thank you, Brett. All right, so running through some of the questions that were asked in the original survey and pulling out the data for Grove Hall specifically. The first question we're looking at is the age range of the respondents. And so what we notice here is that for the younger age demographics, the responses were generally the same. The biggest change we see is from the 40 to 59 age range. In Grove Hall, there's a bit of a dip in those numbers, and those are fed into the 60 to 70 plus age ranges. So we really end up with a bit more of an even response overall for Grove Hall than we did for Dorchester, which is good. And I think that shift in age is most clearly represented in this next question for community and education programs. Here we see a pretty substantial dip in youth and classroom programs as well as toddler rooms, and a lot of that is filled in with senior centers. So that reflects the need for more senior programming than what is currently available across the street. Not to imply that youth classrooms or things like that aren't important as well. They all will be. Next is arts. In Dorchester at large and for Grove Hall, performance spaces were the most important thing that people voted for. Where we see the biggest changes is a decrease in desire for art rooms and maker spaces, and a bit more of a desire for music and band space, and a really substantial increase in the desire for recording studios. That went from around 2% for Dorchester at large, all the way up to 16% for Grove Hall. So that's something we'll be taking into account. Thank you for that question, Janice. That will be coming up in one of the next slides. So next is fitness spaces. For Dorchester, there was a huge proportion of votes for indoor and outdoor pools and much smaller percentage for the other sort of fitness related programs. For Grove Hall, still very substantial amount of votes for indoor pool, the biggest by far. Very minimal for outdoor pool, however, and a lot of that instead fed into these other sort of spaces. So flexible space for things like yoga, dance, health-related classes, cardio rooms, weight rooms, and equipment are programming for boxing and martial arts. And then last is the gymnasium features. Across the board, Dorchester and Grove Hall basketball courts are by far the most important thing to the community, followed by an indoor walking track. And then for Grove Hall, we also see a substantial number of people who are interested in spectator seating for any athletic events that may be going on. And I think that's it.
Great, so we'll turn it over to Andrew.
Yes, thank you. To orient us all, this is the site for the Dorchester Community Center. It has street frontage on 3 sides: Geneva Ave to the south, Normandy Street to the west, and All Fields Road to the north. The BPL Grove Hall Senior Center and Burke High School across Geneva Ave. The Mecca Shopping Center is west of the site, and up Geneva Ave, which is Connector Street from Blue Hill Ave, heading southwest past Columbia Road. The Boston Fire Department Engine 24 building is on Washington Street. Next slide. We recognize that public art is important to this community. Here we've noted the locations of art installations and murals directly on the site and beyond. Next slide. Here's a brief history of the site from the 80s. Up until the early 2000s, there was a garage and laundromat on the site. At this time, there are a few buildings on the Mecca site along Blue Hill Ave and Geneva Ave. On the slide, you can see the red line is a boundary of the site. And by the early 2000s, the city had acquired the site. And in 2002, the buildings of the site are demolished. After which, for a short while, the Bubble, an indoor basketball court, was located on the site. The All Fields Road branch off of Normandy does not exist yet in this time frame. This is the middle image on the slide. And also during this time, the Mecca development begins taking shape. Jumping to today, this is the image on the right. The site is vacant and used for parking. All Fields Road off of Normandy Street is completed, but does not connect to Columbia Road. The Grove Hall Mecca is complete with a grocery store, drugstore, and local businesses. I'll hand it over to Brett.
Great, thanks, Andrew. So we just want to talk a little bit about the catchment area for this new community center and really just take into account some of the existing community centers that are in and around Grove Hall. And so what we're showing here is a map that plots out all of the BCYF community centers in the area around Grove Hall. And we very simply drawn an area that makes that kind of delineates an area where you would be closer to the new Grove Hall Community Center than any other community center. So that area is highlighted here in blue. Next one. And at the same time, we realize that a new community center with a lot of amenities will be a big draw. And so that there might be an area beyond just that walking distance where people want to take public transit to access this community center. And so what we've shown on here as well is the major bus lines with high frequency buses that serve the area around the Grove Hall site, so that catchment area starts to expand. Next one. And then we've also shown here in a little bit more zoomed in areas within a 10 and 20-minute walk of community centers, both run by BCYF, but also others, including the Roxbury Y, and plotted out some of the amenities that are available in those community centers. So for example, we have the Grove Hall Senior Center that's directly across the street from our site. That involves a community room. It's really just a room, whereas BCYF Holland, which is co-located with a Boston public school, offers some more amenities, but has those schedule difficulties associated with the public school. And really what we're trying to get here is to understand the catchment area, the population that this community center will serve, and identify some of the amenities and resources that are available in the neighborhood so that we're tailoring exactly what the community wants and needs in this new community center. Next one. So we'll let Robertson take us through next steps.
Thank you, Brett. So we've come to the conclusion of really just the crux of the presentation, just bring this project back to the light and letting you know where our design process is starting. If you go to the next slide, Petra. So the next steps really is just starting to ramp up that current community engagement piece. Today's meeting is the first of several meetings where we're going to be looking to set up workshops and interactions with the general community to gather more finite data to kind of round this whole idea into form and round the programming into form. The first wave will be confirming activities. There are several workshops being set up from between now and early December. There are a couple set up, one at the middle school, at the Frederick Pilot Middle School for students there. And we also have a workshop set up with the Burke High School, dates to be determined for both for the student engagement. But there'll also be an opportunity for workshops with the Grove Hall Senior Center. I want to say that it's going to be early December. We'll provide the dates as follow-up to after this event. So definitely please be on the lookout for that information. And then there'll be a Saturday workshop for all locals and family members and parents who weren't able to attend the other workshops because they're where they're geared to, but for everyone to come in at the Vine Street Community Center December 9th from 11 to 1 to also partake in the workshops there. And in those workshops will be in person. There'll be various activities to gather ideas and feedback so that we can start seeing what programming makes the most sense and what the community's needs are here. The second community meeting will be to recap this information that we put together. This second meeting will be able to talk further about the data that we pulled from all these various workshops and even from the comments that we get today. So at that second meeting, we'll recount this, do a similar slides in terms of data sharing. And then there'll be another round of community workshops where we talk more about building planning and play with various adjacencies and layouts to see what makes sense in terms of efficiencies. And then we'll probably have a third meeting at that point in early 2024 as we continue to develop the floor plans and the interior and exterior concepts start to take shape, and we have something that we can share based on all the information that we're able to gather. Next slide. So with that said, we'd like to open the floor to comments. We know you've heard a lot of information. And just a recapture of what we've come to what we've gotten from the original study that was performed by UTL in 2022. This is a chance now to really gather and go through some of the questions or go through questions that folks may have. If you're in the Zoom call, there is a chat button at the bottom. You press the Q&A button, the icon that you see here, and you're able to type in your questions, and we're going to go through as many questions as we can with the time remaining. This is not the only time that you'll be able to provide questions. There'll definitely be opportunities to further provide feedback, and we look forward to reviewing all your feedback. We'll turn to the chat box to see if there's any questions. There's first question I see here is from Elsa regarding parking. Parking is currently being discussed and seeing what's the
Tem
opportunity for.
perguntas sobre onde é que nós vai estacionar. Queria assim de discutir sobre.
Sorry about that. So parking is something that's being discussed. It will be limited space for parking as we're trying to maximize the site for program use. So that's something that we are definitely looking into. Question is from Angie regarding how did you survey? So I'm assuming the question was about how this original information was put together. I'll turn to Brett and his team regarding the information gathering.
Sorry, there was a little background noise. Can you repeat the question?
This question is from Angie. It was asked, how did you survey? So I guess the question was about was this first initial round of information put together?
Exactly. Thanks. Thank you for repeating that, Robertson. Appreciate that. So we led the study with the Public Facilities Department and BCYF in 2022 that surveyed all of Dorchester. We had a number of different points of engagement. So we had an online survey that was available on BCYF's website for folks to give us their preferences in terms of the types of activities and uses that they would see in a new community center. We held a number of public meetings in this type of format where we gathered live feedback, and we also had some Zoom polling that we did in that. The survey information that we presented earlier in the show was taken from the online survey. And we were able, in that survey, we asked people to identify their neighborhood of residence. And so we were able to go back through that data and comb through and isolate all of the respondents who identified themselves as Grove Hall residents, just to compare the data of what we saw in 2022 for Dorchester as a whole versus Grove Hall in particular.
Thank you, Brett.
Marta's also reminding me that we had a CAC group, which we did, and there was a meeting with them, and the CAC also met with other residents and neighbors as well.
Thank you. Next question I see up there is from Elsa. Was it Elsa J, entrance location? We haven't gotten that far yet to identify potential entrance locations. The intent is the front end of the building to be on the Geneva Ave. So that's on some location along the Geneva Ave portion of the property. It will be the front entrance. The next question I see is from Linda Freeman. Any preliminary architectural drawings yet? No, we do not have any preliminary drawings at this point. Right now, we're still at the information gathering stage and looking to see what the programming is going to look like so that we can start going over potential test fits and adjacencies in the next phase. So still very early for preliminary architectural drawings. There's a question regarding housing. There was no housing as part of this project. I'll make that clear now. This is just strictly going to be a community center. All right.
Robertson, we have several questions in the actual Q&A box.
Okay, I was in the chat. Thank you for switching me over. So I'll start with Yvonne's question. Are we thinking of opening Oldsfield Road? Hope we can build this without opening Oldsfield Road. There are no plans to do any modifications to Oldsfield Road as part of this project. Once again, parking is going to be minimized as the focus is on maximizing the footprint for programming. Space, how much space is allowed for each program? That is something that's being discussed as we determine what the capacity of the buildings are and what the programming is going to be. So identifying the programming and then identifying how we can configure spaces will be part of the next phase. Questions are coming fast and furious, so bear with me. I'll try to keep up with them. The question I see here is, have we considered it mixed use? Once again, I think we touched base. There's no housing on top of this site. There was a slide showing different community centers. Which ones include senior professionals? Is that the question? I'm not quite sure what that question is geared to. Janice, so if you can elaborate, if you can catch it on an further elaboration, we'll definitely try and answer that. There's an anonymous requesting, considering adding a steam room. Something that we can consider. We'll see if that gets captured in the feedback, but thank you for sharing. Let's see. What will your workshops at the Burke and Leela G. Frederick look like? What information are you looking for? So these workshops are still being finalized with the schools in terms of how the best to capture information from the students. What we're looking to really capture though is what type of programming. As you saw from the graphics we put together, these are the standard programs that we tend to see at community centers. For instance, the basketball court, the pool, seeing where a lot of the feedback was coming from on a wider net. We're really trying to now refocus to groups that are closer to the site and can provide us a better raw data regarding some of these questions and additional opportunities. I'll defer to Brett and your team if you want to speak to maybe some other ideas of what these workshops can look like.
Sure. Thanks, Robertson. So we're still developing the program. We are working with a consultant called Consult Layla to help develop these workshops a little bit further. We want to make sure that they're interactive and hands-on to try to get a different audience than these more traditional public meetings. And there will be, as we showed in the slide, a number of these coming up, just so that we can have different formats to get opinions from all of the potential people who will be using this community center.
Thank you, Brett. Next question I see is how many floors? Floors haven't been determined yet, so we're just looking to identify total square footage and programming for the square footage for each of the programming concepts that make sense. And then we can start to determine how many floors we can fit within that site. But the intent is not to build something that overshadows the neighborhood. We're looking to build something that complements the neighborhood. So that's the intent with the design. There's a question about the gym having HVAC so that it's usable during hot days and so with that, we could definitely speak to that. The intent is to have this as a cooling center. Am I correct, Marta, in saying that? So we'll make sure that
yes, and we're looking to equip it with HVAC.
Yeah, so we'll have a full HVAC system to be able to handle peak heat days when the site will be needed to be used as a cooling center. Interesting question from Mikhaila. Are there any foreseeable setbacks with the timeline of the project? Right now, no. We're just following our processes and making sure that we're maximizing community engagement. So our meetings are scheduled to basically work within the timeline of the project so that we can have this built within the timeline that we've projected. Next question is, are you guys building it LEED certified? It is our intent to be built to LEED certification. the certification that we're going to build to has not been determined yet. But that there is intent to build to lead certification indeed. Our next question will be, is the Grove Hall Senior Center being moved across the street into the new building? I don't think there's plans to eliminate the existing Grove Hall Senior Center. Marta, I'll defer that question to you. If any plans with the Senior Center and how does that impact the new community
Yeah,
center?
it's too soon to tell, but we certainly are trying to be responsive to, again, the request for more senior space. But it's too soon to tell whether that space will go away. I honestly don't anticipate that. It could always remain community space and other space that would be needed in the community. But again, too soon to tell.
Thank you. Will students be able to access the community center during school hours? It'll be a full shop community center. Marta, do you have any comments or response for that question in particular?
I imagine the operating hours of the community center are going to be similar to our standalone sites where it's open during the day. During school hours to serve adults and other populations that are not in school.
Thank you. Excuse me. There was a question regarding the budget. Excuse me. The current total construction budget for this is $50 million. That's what's been approved by City Council as part of the capital plan. And next question I see is from Mike Kuzu. Describe the Burke student presentation that we heard about. So great question, Mike. We had the pleasure of being a part of a presentation prepared by Burke students where they prepared a pitch. Each group prepared various pitches for the community center, what they'd like to see. Some students talked about how they'd use the gym for basketball camps. And then there were plenty of test kitchen options where students were looking to create opportunities where they can cook and prepare items or provide classes and then maybe sell the goods that they made. So it was a fun interactive opportunity to hear what the kids thought of or what they were thinking and how they would make their pitch. It was a great marketing activity. So it was a great opportunity. We're hoping to gather more great feedback like that from the future workshops we have lined up. That's to that one. How are we addressing traffic in that area, and are we making Normandy Street a one-way? Traffic is being reviewed as part of this project. There are no current plans to make any types of massive transit changes. However, BTD will always be consulted on the impact of the site and what it would mean to traffic. So there will be a study done as part of this design phase. All right. So far, I think those are all the questions that I've come across. Will there be
You might
an
want to go
indoor?
back to the chat because there's others piling up there.
Okay, I'll get this one here from Elise. Will there be an indoor walking track in the Grove Hall Senior Center or in the new community center? And is something being taken into consideration, and we're hoping to get more feedback to see how popular an idea that would be. And so it's something that's being taken into consideration for sure. I'll switch over to the chat. Oh, let me just bring that box out. Appears there may be some translation issues. Looking for questions. I'm seeing things jump around.
Robertson, there's a question about, can green or open space be incorporated in this design?
Great question. I think some that we're definitely taking into consideration, some green space. Once again, we're looking to maximize program space. If there's ways to incorporate green space, we'll definitely take a look and see how that could be worked in. I'm jumping back and forth between the chat and the Q&A section. There's a mention regarding Normandy, Geneva Avenue accessibility challenges at that intersection. So definitely something that we'll take into account as we do a traffic study as part of the design phase. Another question in the chat, will there be job training for students or young adults with no experience? I think I'll defer to BCYF about potential programming of that nature.
That hasn't come up. It wasn't in the survey, but again, we're not at the stage where we're discussing programs yet.
Thank you. And any other questions? I'm seeing comments regarding parking and regarding the green space. Just things to consider. So thank you. Please continue to give feedback. We appreciate it. Any other questions at this time in either the Q&A? Will the employees be City of Boston employees? That's a question that just came up.
Oh, yes, this is a BCYF site.
All right. Seeing not as many questions anymore. I think the questions has kind of come to a close. Oh, here we go. Given the mayor's talk on inclusion and opportunities for Black and other people of color, I'm hoping we are using Black contractors for both soft and hard costs, using our local Black bank for any monies to be deposited. I'm sure we are considering these questions. There will be opportunity for all those to participate. There are requirements for BRJP. There are BRJP policies to ensure that certain percentages are met of the workforce being minority, women, or Boston City residents. So there'll be requirements to be met by whoever wins the lowest bid for construction. There's a mention of handicap parking, something that we're definitely taking into consideration as part of the siting study, making sure that there's a possibility if there's parking, making sure that there's some adequate parking for handicap. How will the pool space be maintained if that is agreed to? BCYF has an aquatics team that does a great job doing their best to maintain the existing city pool. So the city BCYF is very familiar with maintaining a pool system. Will the building have cameras and metal detection and membership ID? Security concepts will be taken into consideration. I think there's a membership process now with BCYF. I would definitely reach out to BCYF online and look at getting a membership if you don't have one now. Can a recreational sports league be considered? Boston Public Schools are lacking sports varying from elementary and middle schools in the area. Definitely great feedback, and we'll definitely something that will be taken into consideration, but we're still early in that phase. We're still more in spacing and programming. Thank you, Asha, for sharing your contact information. Asha, the Office of Neighborhood Services Roxbury liaison. She's provided an email in the chats. If you have any other additional questions or concerns. Any other comments or questions from the team? If not, there was a question regarding considering accessibility, not just for parking, but through all our designs. Definitely great point. Thank you. And that is definitely being taken into consideration, Jessica. There's a question regarding sizing, knowing that there's a row of two families, particularly on Oldfield Street. That is being taken into consideration. Once again, the intent with the design is to complement the community, not to overshadow it. So we'll do our best to make sure that we blend the site in properly. Will there be lockers available in the locker rooms? I think there will be for day use only. Will there be gender neutral spaces, including bathrooms and locker room spaces? Yes, there will be. Those are being consideration in the design phase. Well, thank you very much for these questions and all this feedback. We look forward to gathering much more as we continue on with the early design phase and the community input. There's a question about possible intergenerational activities being considered. I think that's part of what we're looking to get, and part of the feedback now is what activities should we be considering, including intergenerational activities. So the more feedback we get on ideas like that, the more we can take back to the team and make sure this building can accommodate those activities. All right, I think that we've answered all the questions that have popped up at this time. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Once again, we'll be sharing these slides. These slides will be made available through the BCYF website, so that you can come back and take a look at the information that we presented as part of meeting 1. There will be another meeting once again, December 13th, after we've gone through our first round of workshops and gathered some feedback regarding programming. And so look forward to chatting with everyone again. Thank you for everyone for coming out tonight, and we'll conclude the meeting at this point. All right. Thank you, everyone.